In the archives of Imperial China, truth wasn't simply written down. It was strictly regulated, sorted, and sanctioned by the state bureaucracy. The ultimate authority belonged to the official dynastic histories, known as zhengshi. These were the state-sponsored records of the past, dictating the orthodox narrative of the emperor's lineage. Yet, hidden within these archives was an anomaly. There were historical texts written outside of the emperor's immediate control that maintained rigorous standards of research, even without the official seal of state approval. Imperial librarians formally categorized these texts as bieshi lei, which translates to alternative histories. The existence of this category suggests that Imperial China maintained a parallel historiographical tradition. It built a sanctioned space within the archives for historical truths that operated independently from the reigning dynasty. To see how this worked in practice, we have to look at how traditional Chinese bibliographies structured the shibu, or the historiography branch of literature. This diagram represents the vertical hierarchy of the shibu branch, where histories were ranked strictly by their perceived quality and authority. At the absolute apex sit the official dynastic histories. These texts held untouchable prestige, compiled under rigid state guidelines. Down at the bottom are the miscellaneous histories, or zashi. Librarians considered these to be qualitatively inferior, often relying on rumor or lacking methodological rigor. The alternative histories category slots precisely between these two extremes. It creates a highly respected middle tier for texts that lacked state sponsorship but possessed exceptional quality. Many of these books functioned as literal shadows to the state records. The Mingshu, for example, acted as a direct alternative to the official Mingxi. The Qidan Guoju mirrored the official Liaoshu. By formalizing this middle ground, imperial bibliographers handed independent scholars a structural tool. They gave them a legitimate platform to challenge the state's version of events without being dismissed as mere miscellaneous gossip. The term bieshu was a late invention. It first appeared out of administrative necessity during the Song period, roughly the 10th to 13th centuries, in a book catalog called the Jijai Shulu Jeti. Before the Song dynasty, imperial librarians struggled to contain these high-quality, unauthorized texts. Without a dedicated category, the archiving system was chaotic. This flowchart illustrates the bibliographic system of the Sui Shu, the history of the Sui dynasty. Notice how the librarians sorted unauthorized texts haphazardly into completely disparate buckets, placing some in chronicles, others in old histories, and some in genealogies. The ancient text Shibin is a prime example of this confusion. Unable to classify its historical scope, librarians awkwardly dumped it straight into the genealogies bucket. Part of the problem was the immense variation in what these books actually covered. Zheng Chao's Tongji, for instance, broke the standard rules entirely by analyzing multiple dynasties at once, refusing to be boxed into a single era. On the other end of the spectrum were hyper-focused texts like Shui Yuji's Chunshou Biedian, which confined its narrative strictly to the spring and autumn subperiod of the Zhou dynasty. The persistent failure to find a permanent home for these texts reflects the difficulty of integrating unauthorized history into a state-controlled archive. We can track this exact anxiety by following the journey of a single text through the imperial archives, the Dongguan Hanji. This graphic charts how 3 different imperial catalogs treated the exact same book over several centuries. During the Tang dynasty, bibliographers viewed the Dongguan Hanji as a vital supplement to the official record of the later Han. As a result, the Tang Shu catalog assigned it to the very top, granting it the status of an official history. But standards shifted. By the Song dynasty, the Song Shu catalog stripped the text of its official status and pushed it down into the newly minted Bieshi middle tier. The demotion continued. In the encyclopedic Wenxian Tongkao, the text plummeted entirely into the miscellaneous category, stripping it of its prestige until later Ming dynasty catalogs finally reversed the decision. The journey of the Dongguan Hanji illustrates how heavily debated these texts were. By the time of the Qing dynasty, the sheer volume of alternative histories forced the imperial court to fully integrate the category into their massive compilation project, the Siku Quanshu. This table represents the scale of the Bieshi category in that final compilation. The Siku Quanshu ultimately solidified the classification, recognizing 20 books fully included within the series, and logging an additional 36 titles in the preserved Ortsun Mu section. The constant recategorization of a book like the Dongguan Hanqi reveals that historical classification in Imperial China was a volatile, living debate over truth itself. The Bieshi framework provided a sanctioned space for historians to engage in direct political subversion. One of the most fiercely contested battlegrounds for this subversion was the Three Kingdoms era, the chaotic period immediately following the collapse of the Han dynasty. The official Sangwo Ji dictated the mandate of heaven passed from the Han to the Cao Wei, but dissenting historians Shao Cheng and Hao Jing challenged this. Their alternative histories, titled Su Ho Han Shu, struck out the Cao Wei entirely, arguing the smaller Shu Han dynasty was the rightful successor. Because the Su Ho Han Shu met the rigorous quality standards of the Bieshi category, this argument could not be dismissed as local folklore. It was a structured, scholarly counterclaim to the supreme authority of the mandate of heaven. Scholars use the protected status of the Bieshi category to publicly declare that the reigning official history was illegitimate. This ideological weapon was deployed across multiple eras. Centuries later, following the collapse of the Great Tang dynasty, historians wielded it again. During this period, the Chinese landmass was fractured. Control was split between the 5 dynasties ruling the north and several competing powers dominating the south. Official records drew a direct succession line from the Great Tang to the northern 5 dynasties, but Chen Ting's alternative history, the Tongyu Jichuan, executes an ideological strike. It entirely bypasses the north, drawing legitimate succession straight from the Great Tang to the Southern Tang. To deny the legitimacy of the 5 dynasties was to dismiss the political authority of the entire northern region, labeling the traditional heartland of power as a series of illegal regimes. These powerful counter-narratives were carefully preserved by dedicated scholars, holding their ground against the immense weight of the state. The Bieshi category is a testament to the sophistication of Chinese historiography. The very system built to enforce a rigid state narrative also carved out a shadow archive, a space where defeated dynasties and subversive truths could survive, waiting for the judgment of history.